looking at the time and keeping the program on schedule, we'd like to just continue on now with our next speaker, and then we'll take a little break as we collect the question cards, and then we'll get the question and answer period then. So.
Just as a reminder, in those cards you may write down the questions you would like to address, as we'll be addressing them. Our next speaker this evening is our Rabbi here, McCullen. Rabbi Rosenburg is a seventh-generation rabbi and holds degrees in speech, communication, Jewish law, and pastoral counseling. Besides being a congregational rabbi, he also has been a radio talk show host and producer, as well as a speaker on the subject of ethics and helping to find potential in each other. Many of you already know him. I'm proud to speak personally much in gratitude to God knowing him. I would like to join me let's listen to him as we welcome Rabbi Rosenburg.
First of all, it's a real honor to follow both Pastor Smith and Dr. Gelman. We're very lucky to have both of them to teach us tonight. And Pastor Benita, thank you for letting us use your facility. And thank you all for coming. Because we're in perilous times in many ways. I'd like to go back to something that James Madison said, and start from there. And tonight what I want to focus on is what not only the basis of laws, but what being a real American is about. James Madison said, "We have staked the whole future of American civilization not upon the power of government, far from it. We have staked the future of all our political institutions upon the capacity of each of us to control and to govern ourselves, to control ourselves, to sustain ourselves according to the Ten Commandments of God." Those of you who may have been here last month when we were at Holy Spirit, and thank you, Monsignor, for letting us use your facility, and thank you for being here tonight as well. And you remember we talked about Chief Justice Roy Moore, who wanted to show what the root of law was. And just as Pastor Smith put up on the screen that piece from Leviticus about justice, Chief Justice Roy Moore from Alabama wanted to show that that law is not the law of man, it's the law of God. And so he put the Ten Commandments in his court. And through a series of events, it was eventually removed by the State Court of Appeals. And he was removed from the bench. Through another series of really interesting events, he's now the Chief Justice again. And what's fascinating about it, you go to the Supreme Court, the U.S. Supreme Court, you'll find a bust of Moses. You'll find the Ten Commandments. You'll find these things because the framers of the Constitution believed that liberty was not for them to create, it was for them to protect. They also knew, as we know today, that if we have a civilization, a government, with not God above us, then God help us. I'd like to fast forward to something that happened just recently. A very American thing. Some of you may have seen it on the news. A young man by the name of Roy Costner from Liberty, South Carolina. And Roy Costner was about to deliver the valedictorian address. He was graduating from his high school, and he had to go and submit his address to the school board because a few weeks before that, the ACLU, how many of you are familiar with the ACLU? Sent a letter saying that, remember, because there are some atheists that belong to this school, and because you cannot mention the name of God anywhere in a public school, that we want to make sure that the address of each student will not mention the name of God. That there will not be a prayer, there will not be any mention of a deity, no supplication, no words of any kind of prayer. And that got circulated around to all the schools in South Carolina. Well, somehow Mr. Costner found out about this, and at the school's commencement on a Saturday night at the Little John Coliseum on the campus of Clemson University, Mr. Costner started his address, the words that were endorsed and that were approved by the school board. He walked up to the podium, he started to speak. About 5 minutes into his speech, he stopped, he took his speech, and he tore it up. And he said, those that we look up to, they have helped carve and mold us into the young adults we are today. He said, I'm so thankful that both my parents led me to God at a young age. And I think most of you will understand the next words I say. And he recited a prayer for Christians, which is very important, the Lord's Prayer. The entire prayer. The audience members began to cheer, first slowly, and then a little bit more, until the applause got so loud it drowned Mr. Costner out. Everyone was applauding except the administration and the teachers sitting behind him. That was an American thing to do. Because in our tradition, we stand up to things like that. In our tradition, we took, what Mr. Costner did at his young age, he understood that freedom and liberty are not things that we created, the things that we cherish, and things like the Constitution guarantee it for us. He also understood that God has a place in this country. When Pastor Smith said in 1963 the Supreme Court banned school prayer, took God out of the classroom, let's see how that's working for us today. Since the last time we met, how many shootings at schools have there been? How many times have children been in peril going to a school? Do we need to talk about things like Boston or Connecticut or recently Santa Monica, California? How many other places do we have to mention where we've taken God out of the school? We've taken the idea of ethics and morality out of the school. Where has that led us in 2013? That young Mr. Costner, at his age of 18, taught us something that people years more advanced still haven't got. You can't take God out of the equation. You can't take God out of the equation of this country. God is written into the fabric of the tapestry of what America is. once you take God out of that wonderful piece of embroidery that makes up the United States, this is what happens. We are educating a whole generation of children in school that don't learn about ethics or morality, or that there is a God above them, or that the origin of law doesn't come from human beings, it comes from God. When we take God out of the equation, we get people who don't think they have anything to lose. Life has gotten so bad, and there's no loving God anyway, so why don't I just go and shoot as many people as I can and then take my own life? That's where we are in 2013. When we talk about the wisdom of people who make laws, and something that Dr. Gelman brought up about the idea of how can you vote on a constitution? How can you vote on ethics and morality? Either it's ethical or it's not. Either it's moral or it's not. It's black and white. The framers of the Constitution did not create a document that was shaded in gray. They created a document that was black and white. Somehow today we've forgotten about that. We have forgotten that the origin of law comes from things that are right and wrong. Not that it should be, well, I don't think you should be doing that. That's why we call them the 10 Commandments, not the 10 Suggestions. So tonight, as we come here and gather together, as we look at everything that has happened in this past year and years beyond that, and if we look back in 1963, from when the Supreme Court took God out of the classroom, can any of us say it's been a better place? The classroom has been a better place, that God doesn't dwell there anymore? Can any of us say that our children have a richer, fuller life, they lead a more ethical and moral life, that we took God out of the classroom? I don't think any of the founders of the Constitution ever imagined that they would see a country, a time when their country would be segregated to the point where their beloved nation, that they understood one nation under God,